Hey everyone, welcome back to our UIKit series, and today we are going to be mastering navigation. We're going to be taking a look at how to navigate through multiple phone screens, as well as pass data between view controllers and set up a tab-based interface, all while using both Storyboard as well as the code example. So I'll show you how to do it both ways within UIKit. So why is this important? Well, on so many apps, we either have a mixture of both or at least one way to navigate between phone screens. There's very, very few apps that are just built within one screen. Think about with a lot of apps that you have to log into, you'll go to that home screen, you'll authenticate, and then navigate to another screen, or when you click on a profile, or even the different messages you may have with other users on an app. Navigation is very important. So if you want to go ahead and open up Xcode and follow along, either in a new project or in your current build, let's go ahead and type on in and see how we can navigate like a pro. All right, so I'm going to create a new project here. I'm going to create a new app template. I'm just going to call it UIKit Navigation. Since we're using UIKit, we're going to be using Storyboard in the language of Swift, and we don't want any testing or storage system selected. When your project is loaded up, we can go over to the main storyboard here, and this is where we're going to be doing a lot of our testing for our navigation. So the first and easiest way to navigate between multiple views is to embed your view controller in a navigation controller. We can do this by selecting the view controller. See how we kind of have this tab at the top here? If we select the first option, this selects the entire view controller. You can think of these view controllers as like the individual phone screens. You can also select it by clicking on the view hierarchy in the left. And in the bottom right of Xcode, you can see that we have this kind of little arrow into a square, and we can say embed in view controller, and we can choose navigation controller. You can also get to this menu by going to the top of your screen, going to editor, embed in, and we'll select the navigation controller. So now you can see that we have this new little phone screen that's popped up, and it's also automatically set itself to be the initial view controller. So we're actually going to be booting into this screen and then our main home screen. And this allows us to kind of have a view hierarchy that automatically allows us to go to as well as return, so to and from, two different phone screens or pages. So let's go ahead and add another view controller to our scene by going to the object library at the top here. Add a view controller. We can drag and drop it down. I'm also going to change the background of this one just so we know where we kind of are, just to confirm, we have indeed gone into the other screen. Let's make it pink. We also now need a way to get from this first screen to the second screen. So we can do this with a bunch of different ways. The easiest way to do it without any code is to add a button on the screen. And then once the button's been added, you can control click and drag, and you'll see that we kind of have this extra little indicator all the way over to the view controller you'd like to go. Once you're there, you can let go, and we see we have an action segue here. And this is how you can choose how you want to display this screen. You can show detail, present modularly, present as popover, or custom. If we're just going to be navigating to this page normally, we don't need any crazy bells and whistles. Let's go ahead and just select show. And we can now see that we have this little line connecting the storyboard. And there's also this little back arrow, meaning that we can return to that previous page. We even see the back button in the very top. If we click on this kind of top bar here, it says we have the navigation item. We have different things like a title, we can change the navigator, we can even add an identifier. Let's go ahead and give it a title. Call this one the home view, or we can just call it like the user's home. How about that? All right, now let's go ahead and test our segue in action. Okay, so you can see that even though we initially booted into the navigation controller, it still takes us to that first page. Let's go ahead and press the button, and now we're home. We can do anything that we need to on this page once it's been populated with the design or code, right? But we can use this back button in order to return to the previous screen. And if you were to kind of stack these on top of each other, you would be able to go back as if you were flipping through pages. So it kind of creates a hierarchy, and the more navigation you add, you can go back to those previous pages as needed. So what if we wanted to, control this segue with a little bit of code instead of just having a button that takes us to a different page? Because right now, this button is going to just exist, and what if we wanted to create an example where we needed to log in with the correct username or password before being pushed to the home screen, right? If this button just always logged us in, it wouldn't make a lot of sense. So let's go ahead and explore how we can do that with code. So I'm going to delete this button, which will also delete the segue. And I'm going to grab 2 text fields. So we'll do one here. Make it a little bit bigger. Copy and paste it, or you can drag and drop another one. And while we're at it, let's also change the system background. Let's make it gray so it kind of pops off a little bit more. Then I'm going to add another button. And I'm going to call this one login. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of make a very simple login screen. And if the user enters the correct password, they will log in. And we're also going to share the data of the username to the other view controller so they get a customized greeting. Let's select our first view controller here. And let's open up the assistant viewer, or on the left side of the screen, you can go to the view controller. But since we're going to be establishing connections to the buttons, I find it's easiest just to use the assistant here. And you can also choose to populate your screen purely by code. I like to populate mine with the IB outlets because I find that it's easier to create. So let's go ahead and control drag our first text field into our code editor under the class, but above the override function ViewDidLoad. And we'll call this one login field. Great, and let's do the same thing for our password field. Password field. We'll also establish a connection with our login button. We'll call this one login. Wonderful. Now, under our ViewDidLoad, we're going to grab our login button again with the control drag, and we're going to make sure that's on an action and that the type is the UI button. You can also change the event. If we're pressing with a button, typically the touch up inside is the best. And we'll call this one login button pressed. And this is where we're going to be kind of handling the function or the action that takes place when we press the login button. So for here, we'll go ahead and create a guard statement, and we'll say password field dot text equals, and then we can put in whatever password. If you were to have this stored as a variable, you would reference that variable here. Otherwise, for our pure test, I'm just going to set it to be that. We'll then create an else statement with some brackets, and in between those brackets we're going to go ahead and return. This essentially allows us to be able to press the button even if it's empty. That guard statement prevents any errors. Then we're going to go ahead and establish a home view controller. Now we'll need to also additionally create that view controller, but we can reference it before creating it. So let's go ahead and say let home vc equals home view controller. So this is going to be a view controller file we're making in just a few moments. Then we're going to go ahead and pass in the username from the first text field, which I believe we called login text field. So we'll go ahead and say that the home vc dot username, so this is the variable we'll be creating in there, equals login field dot text. We can also use our nil coalescing operator to provide it with a default. And let's just go ahead and make it user just in case. Afterwards, we need to navigate to that view controller, and we can do so by using the Navigation Controller. And then we're going to use our question mark, followed by a dot push view controller, which is going to allow us to have that segue transition. I'm going to use the autofill completion here, and this is where we're going to reference which view controller we want to go to. In this case, we want to go to home VC, and we can choose a Boolean value, so true or false if we want it to be animated. I would just set this to be true. That just makes it a little bit smoother. So we do have an error where we cannot find home view controller in scope. So let's go ahead and create it. So since we need to create it, we can either right click in our file folder here, or press the plus button in the bottom left and select a new file from template. And we're going to use the Cocoa touch class here. And we're going to set this just to be a UI view controller. It should be the very first, or I guess third option on my end. And we're going to establish the class with the name of home view controller. We'll go ahead and press next. We're going to add it to our project. Then we'll go back to our main storyboard. I'm going to go ahead and close the assistant out just for a second. We're going to select the view controller of our home page. So this is the one I had made pink. So whatever page you want to navigate to, we're going to open the right panel here, I'm gonna click on the identity inspector. I always say it kind of looks like a newspaper in my head. And from here, this is where we're going to assign the class we just made. And you can either scroll through here or start typing out your HomeViewController, and we should be good to go. Optionally, you can also give it a storyboard ID, and if you really wanted to call this one HomeVC, you absolutely can. So if we go back to our ViewController, we're pretty much good to go, except for we're going to be passing along the username to this ViewController, but the HomeViewController does not have a username associated with it. So in our HomeViewController, let's go ahead and establish that username to be a string. So we'll say under the class, var for variable, it's going to be something that changes, username, which is a string value. And we're also going to use our question mark to mark it as optional. Then in our override function viewDidLoad, this is where we can do things like set up the title of the view or even change the background color if we really wanted to. But let's go ahead and establish the title by just using the title keyword equals, and then we'll say welcome. Then we'll use string interpolation by using the / brackets and passing through the username. And we can also provide it with a backup of user if we want. We shouldn't need to since we've already taken care of it, but sometimes it's okay to be double safe. If you wanted to set up the background color programmatically, you could also do it in the viewDidLoad by setting the view.background color to equal a .color. So in this case, we can do the system pink or whichever color you would like. Alrighty, now in our main storyboard, we can see we don't have that little connection that we had with the button, but since we've handled it programmatically, let's go ahead and build our app and see how it works with checking the username password, with grabbing the username and passing it to the other ViewController, as well as making sure our password is protecting the users from logging in. So let's go ahead and set up a username of Bobby, and then I'm going to first log in with the wrong password. So let's do 123, press the login button, doesn't work. We'll say 1234, log in. We can see that's passed along the username, and we still have that option to go back, and that little animation plays. If we were to change this username, let's go ahead and make it NDC, log in, welcome NDC. So by manually pushing a ViewController and passing data through a public property, we're able to programmatically pass data and handle navigation through a navigation controller. Next, let's take a look at TabBar controllers, and the cool thing is you can actually combine all these things to work together. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my navigation controller. So the easiest way to add the TabBar controller is to once again select the ViewController you want to start from, and you'll use the embed in TabBar controller. You'll notice we have another little ViewController pop up. It's called the TabBar controller, and this is going to allow us to tab between different screens. When we first add it, there's only one TabBar that's been connected, and in this case it's the one we embedded. If you want to connect more phone screens, you'll want to control, click, drag from the middle of the TabBar controller, select the view you'd like to navigate to, let go, and in this case, instead of the manual segue, we're going to be selecting the relationship segue ViewControllers. And once we've done that, you'll notice we have another little tab at the bottom of the TabBar controller. So if you already have storyboards situated, that's the easiest way to set up the TabBar controller. But really quick before we start talking about customization, I'm going to show you another way to add the TabBar controller, and that's to go to your object library and grab the TabBar controller itself from the object library. We can drag and drop it, and it actually comes with two kind of tabs already created. So you can do it either way. If you already have things established or if you're starting from scratch, I'd recommend doing this method. Something I also suggest doing is setting the TabBar controller, just like we did with the navigation controller, to be the initial ViewController, so we boot into that to make sure our tabs are always present. If you want to customize what these little bars say, currently this one it just says item 1 and has a little placeholder image. You want to select on the view itself. So in this case, maybe this is my HomeViewController. We just have all their data, let's say, and we can customize different things like the tab item and the bar item. The tab item you can set to be based off a value, and these kind of are like little notifications. So if I set this to be 1, hit enter, you can kind of see that we have like a one notification. If we just set this to be like sale or something, right? You can use this to highlight different parts of the tab. Otherwise, let's go ahead and rename the bar item itself to home. And let's also select an image. You can use a custom image for this. Just make sure it's scaled down to be super duper small. Otherwise, you can use the SF images, and I would even just use like the search feature. These are really recognizable for users, but if you do want a custom image, make it really small and you should be good to go. And let's go ahead and customize the other one down here with item 2. Let's set this to be profile. Maybe we can have like a little person, or maybe a head. Let's do the person, circle fill. Cool, and you can customize these to your heart's content. Just for the sake of demonstration, I'm just going to change the background between the tabs so we know for sure that we are going between them. Let's set this one to be yellow, and maybe this one green. Now, if you want to customize the bar as a whole, you'll need to go to the TabBar controller itself and select the bottom tab here. And this is where you can add things like a background, image, right? There's so many different customization options you can do with these. It's totally up to you. Let's go ahead and boot this up and see how it looks on the simulator. Cool, so you can see that we have our tab bar here, and we can just click on either of the tabs in order to go between them. If we had 3, 4, 5 options here, you can kind of select them as you wish to kind of tab in between all of them. This is something that's used in a lot of apps, even like social media apps. If you have like your profile, DMs, you know, reels, things like that. So I would use these tab bars to organize major areas of your app, like a home, profile, or perhaps even settings page. And you can even use these different navigation styles in conjunction with one another. So if we add a ViewController here, let's go ahead and embed this in a navigation controller. You can add a button here, or you can do it programmatically. Buttons are just really quick to do. And let's have it go to this page. It's an action segue of show. We'll set this background to be, I don't know, this one be red. Now if we go to our profile, we can press this button and we can go to this red page. You'll notice that our tab bar in the bottom still stays. And what's cool is if I were to press on the profile that has been pushed to that red page, we can see that we're kind of in this same area currently. So if this was something like messages, and from the profile I opened up a certain person's messages, I would still be on this page. So you can kind of see it saves where you are in that stack when you use the tab bar. So you can use both navigation and tab bar in conjunction in your application. You're not limited to just one or the other. Alrighty, and I'm going to show you how to accomplish this programmatically if you would prefer to do that instead of Storyboard. So what we can do here is we can add another tab bar controller, drag and drop that down. Wonderful. And what we're going to want to do is this time in our new file from template, we're going to select the Cocoa Touch class, but instead of the subclass of UIViewController, we're going to be doing it as a UI tab controller. So you can either scroll, I also suggest just typing it out, so it would be UI TabBar Controller, much easier. And let's go ahead and call this one TabBar Main View Controller. Add this to our project. And we can see here we already have the class and how it conforms, good to go. In our override function view did load, this is where we're going to be setting up those different views. So we can establish our first page. Maybe for this one, it's like my feed on my social media app. So we'll call it feed VC. We'll have it equal a UI view controller, empty brackets. And this is where we can set things like the background color as well as the tab bar item programmatically. So the feed VC dot view dot background color equals, let's do dot system blue, why not? Oh, actually, system mint. That sounds cooler. And then let's also establish the tab item. So feed VC dot TabBar item equals UI TabBar item. And we'll add a bracket. I'm going to be selecting this TabBar system item as well as the tag for the system item. This is where we can select a built-in one. If you want to see the list, you can use the dot. So in this case, let's go ahead and set it to be dot favorites. It's going to have like a little star. And then for the tag, this is where we're going to assign it a number. So this, just like with an array, would start at 0. So the first one we want is going to be the tag of 0. Let's do the exact same thing for our settings. Let's call this one settings VC, which is going to equal UI ViewController, empty brackets. We will take the settings VC and update the view.background. And let's set this one to be dot system purple or whatever color. It's honestly up to you. Then we'll also have the TabBar item. So TabBar item should equal the UI TabBar item. Do the third option again. So this one would be the dot search maybe. Should be like a little magnifying glass. And the tag will set to be 1. Then we're going to establish our view controllers at the very bottom in an array. So I'll say view controllers equals, we'll use our square brackets, and we'll have our feed VC and our settings VC. All right, now in our main storyboard, we'll go to the TabBar controller that we added. We'll go to the custom class, and we're going to set it to be that TabBar main view controller that we created before. And we'll set it to be the initial view controller as well. Let's go ahead and build our app, and we should be good to go. All right, we can see here that we have our favorites. I apologize if the contrast isn't great from the blue and the cyan, but we also have our search. Right, so we've established these view controllers purely programmatically based on our TabBar main controller. We've set up the TabBar system items as well as the color of their backgrounds, and there's so much more customization you can do. This is just scratching the surface to show you how to navigate. The customization in your app is all on you. So the navigation controller as well as the TabBar controller are the two main ways to navigate screens. I also showed you how to pass along data and build the TabBar layouts using both Storyboard and Code. You can use those navigation controllers for flows and TabBars for structures, mix and match depending on your app's needs. Now let's talk a little bit about the more underused, perhaps niche navigation methods in UIKit. Okay, let's talk about a couple more niche but still very usable storyboard setups with navigation. We're going to be taking a look at the module presentation, the sheet presentation, as well as the page view controller, and I'll show you really quickly how to do these with Storyboard and just Code. For my demonstration purposes, I'm just going to be grabbing 4 view controllers just to kind of show you how each of these work. Let's go ahead and grab 4 of those. All right, and let's take this first view controller and we'll set it to be the initial view controller so we can boot on into it. Let's go ahead and grab some buttons. So I'm gonna use these to navigate. So for this first one, let's go ahead and call it show module. And we can even copy and paste this just to save some time. So instead of module, let's go ahead and do the sheet. And then one more time, we can do the pages. So let's also set the storyboard ID on these other view controllers. So for this identity, we'll call it the model view controller. We'll be making files for these as well. For the second one, we'll do the sheet view controller. And for the final one, go ahead and do the pages. So just to keep my project intact, I am going to make a new file from template for each of these view controllers. So let's go to our Cocoa Touch class. Let's set this back to being just a regular UI view controller. We'll call this one main view controller. Go ahead and create that. Go back to our main storyboard here. On the view controller, under the class, set it to be main view controller. Now let's go ahead and open up our assistant here. I'm also going to just close these tabs so we get a little bit more real estate. And under our view did load, let's go ahead and grab our module button. Let's drag it on over, and let's go ahead and call this one show module tapped. And we'll set the sender to be a UI button. Go ahead and connect that. And within this function here, this is where we're going to define the storyboard. We're also going to define the module VC, very similar to how we've done the push navigation programmatically previously. So then go ahead and establish the storyboard. So let storyboard equals UI storyboard. And we can also have the name and the bundle here. So for the name, we'll call this one main. And for the bundle, we'll set this to be nil. Then we'll also establish the module VC, which is going to equal the storyboard.instantate ViewController. We're going to select this first one here for me with identifier. And this is where we're going to reference our module ViewController. Then we'll reference that module VC.module presentation style. And this is where we can choose the different styles. So if we do our dot notation, we can see the different types. We have popover, full screen, custom, automatic. Let's go ahead and see what full screen looks like. This should be kind of like a page that kind of appears. Then we'll go ahead and present the module VC. We can choose it to be animated. Let's go ahead and set that to be true, so it looks a little bit cleaner. And then we'll have our completion be nil. So this is how we can do it programmatically. Let's go ahead and test this out on the simulator real quick, and then I'll show you how to do it on the storyboard. You know what, before we actually test this, let's go ahead and change the background color here. So I'm just going to close the assistant. Let's go ahead and change the background of this page. We can make this one cyan. And maybe we can even add a little label here. And let's have it say module presentation. Wonderful. Okay, let's go ahead and run this, and then I'll show you how to do it with just Storyboard instead of programmatically like we've just done. Right, here's our app. Okay, we might have to fix the buttons too. Let's go ahead and show it, and we can see that we have the module presentation, and because we've set it to be full screen, it is taking up the entirety of the screen. If we were to go to our main view controller here, and we were to change this, let's go ahead and have it be a popover, or maybe even a page sheet. Let's do the popover. Let's see how that looks. So with the popover, you can kind of see that the screen's just like as if you put a piece of paper in front of it. And we can actually move and swipe this away in order to return to the original sheet. Something that some people do as well is they put like a little X button up here to close out, just like with like a little internet ad. But you're able to use this kind of popover style, and there's lots of other different styles you can play around with, but it doesn't have that built-in back button navigation that the navigation stack does offer. But depending on your needs, this can be something that can be really, really interesting. And you can kind of play around with the different presentation styles. If we want to do this with the storyboard, I'm just going to go ahead and comment this off. Well, let's go to our main storyboard here. And now when we go ahead and connect to the button, you'll see that we have the action segue, and we can actually choose to present it as a popover, or we can present modularly. And the cool thing is we can actually click on this little segue link here. And you can look at the presentation, and this is how you can actually change how it does get presented to the user. There's also different transitions that you can have, choose it to animate, right? So this might be a little bit easier if you don't want to do it programmatically, but that's how you can do module presentations. All right, I'm going to go ahead and delete this segue because now we're going to be taking a look at sheet presentation. This is iOS 15 plus, but everybody should be running this as of now. So let's go ahead and open up our assistant viewer once more while targeting our main storyboard here. And under our commented off module tab, let's go ahead and grab this button and connect it to our view controller. And we'll call this one, we did show module tab. Let's do show sheet tabbed. We'll set this to also be a UI button. Go ahead and connect that. You're going to notice a trend here. We're first going to establish the storyboard. So let storyboard equals UI storyboard. We're going to do the one with the name and the bundle. Call this one main, the bundle to be nil. We'll then establish the sheet VC. And this is going to be the storyboard dot instantiate view controller with identifier. I think we call this one sheet view controller. We can always go ahead and look if we do have a mistake or an error what we actually called it. Now we're going to create an if let statement. So I'll say if let sheet equals sheet vc dot sheet presentation controller. Go ahead and add our brace here, make a little space, and we'll have the sheet dot detents. So this is going to be an array of heights where a sheet can actually rest. So we're going to have this equal an array. So we're going to use our square brackets, and then we're going to choose the different sizes. So we can see here that we have a medium and large. So let's have the first one be medium, and then let's have the next one be large. So this is something that you can play around with the different sizes. We're then going to reference the sheet dot prefers grabber visible. So prefers grabber visible. So this is a Boolean value that determines whether the sheet shows a grabber or not at the top. Let's go ahead and set that to be true so we can look at what the grabber is. Outside of this brace, but still within the function of the button, we're then going to go ahead and present the sheet VC, and we'll have the animation be true. Alrighty, now on our sheet view controller here, which I believe this is the one. Let's go and double check. Yeah, our sheet view controller. Let's go ahead and confirm that we're traveling to it, and we'll even change the background color real quick. Let's have this one be gray too. All right, let's press on our show sheet, and you can see here that half the screen kind of has this little sheet, and there's like this little tab at the top. So that is the grabber that we set it to be visible. You can see with the gray, it's still pretty easy to see, and the grabber allows us to kind of adjust it. And you'll kind of notice that if I drag it like halfway up, it kind of goes all the way up. If I only drag it a little bit, it kind of bounces back down. So this is something where you can even like present it as a sheet. Otherwise, you know, you can kind of just easily close it. This is something that's used in a lot of apps. You know, this is also something that kind of reminds me of like in-app purchases too. If we want to do this purely with Storyboard, let's go back to our view controller and we'll comment off that code once again. It's very similar to how we've been doing things. We'll just change the way that we're presenting and use the present moduli and just change it to be a sheet instead. So let's go ahead and grab our button, control drag to this view controller, present moduli, click on the segue, and under the presentation, page sheet, and you should be good to go. The only thing is if you do it with the storyboard, you can't configure the detents unless you write it in Swift, just as a note. Okay, let's go ahead and delete that connection, and we're going to be taking over and we're going to be looking at the page view controller. So this is going to allow the user to swipe between multiple child views. This one is much easier to do on the storyboard. Please use the Programatic setup here. If you really want to play around with the page, what I would do is I'd grab the page view controller and you can play around with it here, but trust me, Programatic all the way on this one. All right, we're going to go ahead and make a new view controller here. So we're going to create our file from template, do our Coco touch class here, and let's go ahead and call this one page view controller. Now for the subclass, we'll want it to be a UI page view controller. And we're also going to have it be another one as well, because we also need to provide it with data sources. But we'll just have the subclass be the UI page view controller first. Go ahead and create this. And now where we have our class, we're going to add a comma and do UI page view controller data source. So the third option for me here. And you'll see that we have an error here. You can choose to add these stubs for conformance, but I'm just going to be typing out everything. Might be a little bit faster to the stubs, but that's okay. So we're going to establish some pages here, and this is going to be an array of different page content view controllers. And each of these is going to have some text. And we can include what we want these to say. I'm just, for simplicity, going to have like page 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to add page 1. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this a couple more times. So we'll have page 2 and page 3 as well. We'll leave our override function view did load, and we're going to actually add a data source. So we can go ahead and say data source equals self. So it's going to grab the data from the view controller itself. Then we're going to go ahead and set view controllers. And I'm going to choose this first one with the view controllers direction and animated. So for the view controllers, we're going to reference the array of the pages that we created above. And we're also going to add another square bracket with the number 0, so that index number. For the direction, we can choose how we want to go. We can do either forward or reverse. I'm going to start mine with forward. We can choose the animation to be true or false. It's a Boolean value. I'm going to set this one to be true. Then, because we need to add the conformance of the UI page view controller data source, we're going to create a couple functions. And the first one is called the page view controller. But I'm not going to select the autofill on this one because we actually need to do a lot of different work. So we're going to do underscore PVC, which stands for page view controller. And then this is going to conform to the UI page view controller. Use your autofill here, comma, view controller before view controller, capital C. And this is going to be the UI view controller. Outside of this bracket, we're going to return. So we're going to use our little arrow here. We're going to be returning a UI view controller with a question mark. We'll then add our braces for our function, and we're going to create a guard let statement, which is going to be for an index. It's going to equal our pages dot first index, and I'm going to do of view controller as page content view controller. Outside of this, we're going to add a comma and we'll say index is greater than 0, else, and because we're using a guard let, we'll then return. But in this case, we can actually return nil. Afterwards, we're going to add a new line and we'll say return the pages, add our square brackets here, index -1. Okay, and we need to create another function also called page view controller. I know it seems very weird. We're going to do a lot of similar things. We're going to have our underscore PVC, which is the UI page view controller, comma, view controller. And this time we're going to be doing after instead of before. And this is also going to be view controller, which conforms to the UI view controller. I'm going to go ahead and return with our little arrow here a UI view controller with our question mark. I don't know if it'll cause an error, but there should probably be a space after the return arrow. Go ahead and add our brace. I'm going to be creating a guard let, which will be an index equals pages dot first index of view controller as page, capital P, page content view controller, add a comma after index is less than pages dot count -1, else return nil. And then we'll go ahead and have our return of pages index +1. So here we're establishing basically the amount of pages that we're going to be using within our index. I have a billion errors because we can't find the page content view controller in the scope. So we can go ahead and create that. So let's go ahead and create a new file from template, Cocoa Touch class. We'll call it page content view controller. And this is actually just going to be a regular UI view controller here. Go ahead and create that. And within the content, we actually don't even need the override function view did load here. Instead, we're going to initialize with our init. This is going to be some text, which is going to be a string. And erase. We're going to do our super.init, which is the one with the nib name and bundle. So we'll just give the name of nil and the bundle to also be nil. We'll then add the self.view.background color. You can have this equal, .system background if you want to do like system red, blue, things like that. I'm just going to do the system mint That sounds like a cool color. And we can establish programmatically different things like a label. So let's have this equal a UI label. We can update the label.text to equal the text. Any other customization can go here. You can even choose to, use auto constraints and things like that. But the important part is that you have a required initializer. So you can even go here and use the stubs to fix it. So this is the programmatic way of setting this up. I'm sorry, this is supposed to be a page content view controller, not page view controller. There we go. Okay, so let's go to our storyboard here. Okay, let's go ahead and navigate to our pages here, and let's go ahead and present modularly. We can select the type. Let's do full screen. Let's go ahead and attach our ViewController class here as well. We call this one page ViewController. Let's go ahead and run that. Show the pages, and you can kind of see we can flip through them, and it kind of has like this page animation. I'm kind of like dragging the page. Looks like a paper of a book, and I can only go back to the main page. Then as we kind of flip through, if I get to the end, we can no longer move backwards. So you can use this if you have things like instructions, or maybe a pamphlet or other information that you want to show to the user. Pages one is really difficult and kind of funky to set up. I can't even remember the last time I used an app that used the pages one, but if you're interested in setting it up and then kind of populating the pages content, it's almost similar to when we do things in a table in UIKit. This is how you can accomplish it. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned so many new ways of navigating with your app in UIKit. I've also done a video on SwiftUI if you're curious about that one as well. And this sample project with the comments will be posted on my GitHub pages. So if you do want to reference any of those, I like to really, when I'm using Storyboard, I like to use a lot of the drag and drop features, but I've shown you how to do them programmatically as well as with Storyboard. Setting up a storyboard for the pages specifically is a nightmare. Do this one programmatically, trust me. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments below what you're working on or if you learned something new. Otherwise, dream big, code bigger, and have a wonderful day.